Decades of recordings, captured across vast stretches of the Atlantic, were recently processed by an artificial intelligence system designed to recognize hidden patterns in complex data. What researchers expected to find were variations in sound, perhaps subtle signals tied to behavior. What they did not expect was structure. As the system began organizing thousands of sperm whale vocalizations, something unusual started to emerge. The sequences were not random. They followed consistent patterns. Repeating elements appeared in different combinations. Rhythms shifted depending on context. And on the screens inside a quiet lab, researchers found themselves looking at something that felt strangely familiar. Not noise, not instinctive signals, but something closer to a system. A system that resembled the foundations of language itself. The realization did not arrive dramatically. It unfolded slowly, as each new layer of data confirmed the last. The clicks produced by sperm whales, long known to scientists, were revealing an internal organization that had gone unnoticed for decades. Patterns nested within patterns. Variations that appeared intentional rather than accidental. And as one researcher quietly observed, this was not supposed to happen. For years, animal communication had been understood within certain limits. Signals could be complex, even sophisticated, but they were not believed to reach the structural depth of human language. Language, in its fullest sense, required combinatorial rules, flexible expression, and context-dependent meaning. It was considered uniquely human. What the data suggested challenged that assumption. The project responsible for this discovery began not with artificial intelligence, but with a simple observation. A marine biologist studying sperm whales in the Caribbean had spent years listening to recordings of their clicks. These sounds, sharp and rhythmic, echoed through the water in sequences that seemed repetitive, but not entirely predictable. At first, they were treated as signals, functional and limited, tied to immediate needs. But when those recordings were shared with researchers outside marine biology, a different perspective began to take shape. To a trained ear, the clicks did not resemble simple calls. They resembled encoded information. That idea, once introduced, changed the direction of the research entirely. Artificial intelligence, particularly systems designed to analyze human language, had already demonstrated the ability to detect patterns across massive datasets. These systems could identify structure where none was immediately visible, translating between languages and uncovering hidden relationships between words and meanings. The question became unavoidable. If these systems could decode human language, could they do the same for whales? To answer that, researchers needed data. Not dozens of recordings, but thousands. Not isolated sounds, but continuous streams of communication captured over time. Field stations were established in regions where sperm whales were known to gather. Recording equipment was deployed to capture their vocalizations in as much detail as possible. Over time, a vast archive began to form. Thousands of sequences, each one a fragment of a larger system that no one yet fully understood. When this data was finally processed, the first major shift in understanding occurred. Previously, scientists had categorized whale clicks into a small number of patterns. These patterns were assumed to represent simple signals, basic forms of communication that conveyed limited information. But the AI analysis revealed something far more complex. The number of distinct patterns was far greater than expected, and within each pattern, there were variations, subtle changes in timing, spacing, and structure that suggested a level of flexibility not previously recognized. It was not just a set of signals. It was a system capable of variation. And variation is where language begins. Human language is built from a limited set of sounds, combined in different ways to produce meaning. These sounds follow rules. They can be rearranged, expanded, and modified to express new ideas. What the researchers were seeing in whale communication appeared to follow a similar principle. Finite building blocks, infinite possibilities. This realization raised a deeper question. If whales were combining sounds in structured ways, what were those combinations representing? Further analysis focused on the acoustic properties of the clicks themselves. And here, another unexpected detail emerged. Within the sequences, there were elements that behaved like vowels. In human speech, vowels are fundamental. They shape the sound of words, allowing for subtle distinctions in meaning. They are produced through controlled variations in airflow and frequency. The whale clicks, when examined closely, showed comparable variations. Not identical, but analogous. Different tonal qualities appeared in consistent positions within sequences. These variations were not random. They followed patterns, suggesting they played a functional role in the structure of communication. For researchers in linguistics, this was difficult to ignore, because vowels are not just another feature of language, they are one of the defining characteristics of it. And now, something resembling them was being observed in a species that communicates entirely through sound in the darkness of the deep ocean. The implications extended beyond structure. Observation of whale behavior revealed that these vocalizations were not used in isolation. They occurred within social interactions. Whales responded to each other. They produced sequences that overlapped, alternated, and adapted depending on the situation. The same individual could produce different patterns when interacting with different members of its group. That suggested context. Context is where communication becomes something more than signaling. It becomes interaction. In natural settings, whale groups displayed behaviors that appeared coordinated. Individuals moved together, separated, and regrouped while maintaining communication. Mothers and calves exchanged sequences that seemed consistent over time. Groups produced overlapping patterns that resembled exchanges rather than isolated calls. To observers, it did not feel random. It felt structured. But structure alone does not define language. Meaning does, and meaning remains the one element that has not yet been fully uncovered. The AI systems can identify patterns, they can classify sequences, and they can map relationships between different forms of communication, but they do not yet understand what those forms represent. To reach that stage, researchers need context. They need to connect specific vocalizations to specific behaviors, to understand not just how whales communicate, but why they choose certain patterns in certain situations. This requires a different kind of data. Devices are now being used to record not only sound, but movement, depth, and environmental conditions. These recordings are synchronized, allowing researchers to observe what happens when particular sequences are produced. Over time, these observations may reveal associations. A specific pattern linked to a specific action. A sequence that appears during feeding, or navigation, or social interaction. Piece by piece, the system may begin to reveal its meaning. But even before that stage is reached, the implications are already significant. Because if whales possess a structured communication system with combinatorial properties, contextual variation, and social usage, then the boundary between human language and animal communication becomes less defined. It suggests that the capacity for complex communication may not be unique to humans. It may exist in forms we are only beginning to recognize. And that raises a broader question. If another species possesses a system that approaches language, what does that imply about intelligence? About awareness? About the way we define consciousness itself? Sperm whales are not solitary animals. They live in stable social groups, maintaining relationships over long periods of time. These groups exhibit behaviors that suggest coordination, memory, and possibly even cultural transmission. Their brains are among the largest in the animal kingdom. Their environment is one of near total darkness, where communication becomes essential for survival. In such conditions, sound becomes more than a signal. It becomes a medium through which a world is shared, a way of navigating not just space, but social relationships. And if that medium contains structure, variation, and context, then it begins to resemble something we recognize, not identical, but comparable. The final implications of this discovery have yet to unfold. Researchers have not translated a single complete message. They have not identified words, sentences, or meanings in the way we understand them. What they have identified is a foundation, a system that suggests the possibility of language. And that possibility changes the conversation entirely. Because if whales are not simply communicating, but exchanging structured information in ways that resemble language, then the way we understand their world and our relationship to it may need to change. The data continues to grow, the models continue to improve, and somewhere in the depths of the ocean, conversations are taking place that we are only beginning to hear. The question is no longer whether whales communicate. It is whether we are ready to understand what they are saying.